Welcome back today. I am so excited to have this guest. He is somebody that I've met the last year, and I'll give you a super quick history of how I know him. And then we're, of course, going to let him introduce himself. But today I am excited to have the founder and CEO, Tim Roberts. He is founder and CEO of a company called Scale It Now. You may notice some similarities in the name there. And he's hiding in the dark over here, so let's get him some light going on. And what I
Sorry
love
about
about this guy is he is so authentic. You will not find a coach or trainer or anything else that is authentic and just literally no bullshit as this guy is. He came into my life about 8 months ago. I was originally just looking for a bookkeeper, and so we got connected. And of course, they have a bookkeeping company as well. His wife runs a bookkeeping company, and he's like, "Yeah, I can, of course, do that." He's like, "But also, what I do." Is and then this episode is going to show you why I immediately brought him on. He's been my basically my business coach and implementer, integrator for the last 8 months of for Close It Now, as well as we're doing some really cool stuff together now. So super excited to introduce. This is Tim Roberts of Scale It Now. Welcome to the show, man.
well, thank you very much. Wow, you took my breath away with that introduction, and I got to tell you, I'm just going to. That's it. Just listen to whatever Sam says about me.
Yeah,
That's.
I love
No need
it.
to
So,
interview.
so
Sam
give
will just.
everybody a history
Sam will
of,
just.
why in the world are you sitting in the seat? So for everybody that's listening, I don't always, I almost never, when I very first meet somebody, hire them on the spot for something for me, especially for my company. That did not happen. That absolutely happened with this gentleman. The second we had our first conversation, I was like, let's go. This is exactly what I need in my life right now. So give everybody a super quick highlight reel. How, a little of your history and why in the world are we on this podcast today?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a journey, I guess. Yeah, I've got a little bit of an eclectic background. I started in sales. I've got a military background as well, so I understand what grit means. To have grit when you don't want to take another step. I understand that, and I was successful in sales. I worked for a very large company back in the early '90s, and I wound up being the number one rep in the country for writing new business. That means not penetrating accounts or or renewing accounts. I was writing new business, and the reason was is because there weren't any accounts. So if I wanted to make any money, I had to go out and I had to actually to write new business, and it was interesting because it became a point of pride, to where, yeah, hey, look, you're renewing stuff. That's great. You didn't start that account. I used to say stuff like that.
Hmm.
I would just get under people's skin, little competition, head games, people play with each other in sales. It's a lot of fun, the banter. But I became the number one rep in the company, and I had an altercation with my sales manager. We did not get along.
Hmm.
We did not. We had a personality conflict that, I mean, it was a personality conflict. It was like vinegar and water, and
Hmm.
it just didn't work. And so one day, I used to carry my resignation letter around in my briefcase. I'm not kidding. I did, because I can't remember where I read it or where I heard it from. Yeah, I do. It was Harvey McKay.
Hmm.
When I read "Swim with the Sharks Without Getting Eaten Alive," he made a comment. He makes a comment in that book about something about salespeople are never out of work.
Hmm.
People are always trying to hire great salespeople. They don't have to worry about a job. In fact, a salesperson could even conceivably walk around with his resignation letter in his briefcase. And I thought that was the greatest thing ever, because and when I it's so silly, what you do when you're younger. If I could talk to myself uh back then, I would just go, you're such an idiot. But but I left the company because I realized that not a single person from Rochester, New York, had come into any one of my accounts.
Hmm.
In fact, my direct sales manager had never been in one of my accounts. So for all intents and purposes, I was the company.
Right.
And so I thought if I'm doing that and people think I'm the company, I may as well start my own.
Sure.
And fortunately for me, part of what I was doing was I was working in the professional services division of the company, and it was really more about management consulting. And so I learned a lot about best practices, and then I started learning a lot more. It was geometric, the learning scale. I am one of those people that I have a tenet that says turn cost centers into revenue centers as quickly and as often as you possibly can. So I'm always trying to think of a way to fund a business or to fund my education without spending a dime. It's sort of like growth hacks, right? So what's your
Absolutely.
growth hack? What's your personal growth hack? Well, here was mine. Okay. I I used to take a brown bag, a sack lunch to work every day. My wife's a chef, so they were really good lunches. And and so I knew back in those days you didn't have email, you didn't have texting, you didn't have anything like that. Everything was phone, right?
Hmm.
So from 11:30 in the morning until basically 2 p.m. or 2:15, in one half of that time frame, half of the prospects were out to lunch, and the other half of the time frame, the other half of the prospects were out to lunch. So no matter if you made 100 calls, you reduced your efficacy by 50%
Hmm.
just because of the clock.
Sure.
And before we came on air, I told you I refuse to reduce my percentages of a desired outcome, of gaining the desired outcome by anything I can control. And that's an old John Wooden thing.
Hmm.
I think we've talked about John Wooden in the past. I think he's the greatest coach that ever lived. And but the very first practice of every UCLA, and this is when they're winning like 10 national titles in a row, man. I mean,
Right.
the very first practice of the year, all the newbies come in and he taught them how to put their socks on properly and lace their shoes
Hmm.
properly and tie them properly. So one day Bill Walton says, "Hey coach, why why is this the first thing?" And he goes, "Well, I'll tell you why, Bill. He goes, because if your shoes and your socks aren't put on properly and your shoes aren't tied properly and laced properly, you're going to get a blister. And if you get a blister, you can't go 100% in the fourth quarter, Bill. So anything that we can control, we're going to control.
Right.
Okay. You can't control everything. You can't control outcomes, but you can control what you do. Right. So I started thinking about that. And then so my personal growth hack, because I didn't want to spend any money to do it, was I would go to Barnes and Noble or what was the other one that Barnes and Noble or Borders.
Borders. Yeah.
Every day I would go there between 11:30
Well, if
and
we're in
2.
the 90s, I mean, we've got Walden books and that kind of thing
Yeah,
too.
yeah. I never went to a Walden. You know why? Because they didn't have the coffee.
Right.
So I would go in from 11:30 to 2. I'm not kidding. I actually did this. I From 11:30 to 2 every day, I would go in and I started in the A's of the business section and I read every book in the business section. It took me 5 years to do it.
Sure.
Okay. But by the end of the second quarter of the first year, I knew that I wasn't assimilating knowledge fast enough. Because remember, in those days, um, CFOs didn't talk tech
Hmm.
and CTOs didn't talk to CFOs. Okay. No one spoke the same language in the company.
Right.
Okay. Because it was all so new. I mean, you still have IBM mainframes laying around, and I was dealing with those all the time. So it was a really really interesting time when Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and Andy Grove were the pirates of Silicon Valley, and they were proud to be pirates, baby.
Hmm.
I mean, they really really were. Old Bill, he's doing everything he can to rehabilitate his reputation now with all the great work he's doing with the Gates Foundation. But come on, Bill, you and I both know you're a pirate at heart. Come on, dude.
Love it.
It's true. So I was there, Bill. But in any case, so yeah, so I took a speed reading course after the second year, or this is the second year, second quarter, and that's when the learning rate went up geometrically because
Hmm.
my memory, not so much anymore, but it used to be, I almost had a photographic memory.
Hmm.
Like I can still remember to this day, the first time I laid eyes on my wife. I know what she was wearing from her head to her toes, and I know the song that was on the radio.
Hmm.
Absolutely. It
I
was our
love
wedding
this.
song, in fact. So I retained a lot of knowledge, and I read 700. What I read over 800 books.
Hmm.
I read over no no I read 790 some odd books then, and to date I've probably read maybe maybe over 1,000,
Sure.
because what you find out is they start to repeat themselves.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? But anyway, so I just took that learning and I began to speak to CFO, because it became very clear to me that when the situations are bad in the economy, particularly, everything becomes a financial decision.
Hmm.
You've got four basic responses that any customer is going to have, especially if it's B2B. Okay. The first one is, are they in a growth mode? Well, if they're in a growth mode, your chances of making a sale are pretty high.
Hmm.
Okay. If they're in an even keel mode, meaning they could take it or leave it. Hey, look, we're doing great here. Basically their status quo. Your chances aren't so high. If they're basically overconfident and they're like, I don't need anything you've got, I'm the king of this market,
Hmm.
blah blah blah. I mean, if they're, and I'm not bagging on him, but I just love it when he just starts talking about something. Is everything is great. It's going to be the greatest thing you've ever
It's going
seen.
to be
And
huge.
when the president does that, I just crack up, because that's an overconfident company, right? Your chances of making a sale in an overconfident company are zero.
Hmm.
It's zero. Okay. But your chances of making a sale in a trouble company that's in trouble, oh yeah, that's when it's the highest,
Hmm.
because they're looking for any way at all, any way that they can actually solve the problem,
Right.
right the ship, if you will, right? So I looked for troubled companies. People asked me, how do you prospect? Newspaper. It was the business section. There was a calamity every so it wasn't too hard, and I would find out, I would get their stock information if they were public. If they weren't public, I used to have be very very good friends with the entire personal assistant pool. They used to call it a secretary pool back in those days. And let
Hmm.
me tell you something. Here's a tenet. Here's something for all you people who sell B2B out there. Okay, executives, no matter how dynamic or effective, come and go. Great secretaries and administrators remain forever. In fact, they're the ones who train the new executives.
Hmm.
One of my favorite things to say to one of the administrators, or particularly the head, the number one secretary in the company, I can't remember what they used to call that title, but I would say, how many executives have you trained in your career? And she would start laughing. She would just start laughing. She goes, that's a really good question. She goes, seven. First time I asked it, I'll never forget it. She goes, seven. Her name was Vicky. She was awesome. But let me tell you something. If you can understand who those leaders, those administrative leaders are in an account, and I'm not talking about somebody who's a VP of admin or anything. I'm talking about the people who actually run the day to day,
Hmm.
who actually do the grunt work, leg work, who move, who send this email or send this or send that or do this or do that. That's not the executive. That's the person on their team, right? But if you can get into somebody's good graces, that's going to become your internal coach in the account and every other account you want, because they all talk to each other. You really think that Bill Gates's assistant did not speak to Steve Jobs' assistant?
Oh, I'm sure they did.
You're crazy.
Yeah.
You're crazy if you don't think they did. Okay, and they do in all the Fortune 500 companies. They all know one another, and I think there's an organization called um I can't remember something. I'll find out what it is. I can't remember what it is, but it's for like the Fortune 100,
Hmm.
Fortune 200, all the CEO assistants there. Okay, they're part of that. And these people can open doors like you wouldn't believe it. You know why? Because they control the calendars.
Hmm.
They control their lives. You want to
Right.
get on their calendar? That's who you need to impress.
Ooh, what I hope everybody's that does
Okay.
commercial in this community is listening. These are golden nuggets here, that's for sure.
Well, it's a little bit different these days because they don't take phone calls. They're a little harder to get to.
Hmm.
Internal everything is sort of hidden because nobody wants to actually to take a call. But it's really really interesting because you know I remember who was it? Very powerful, very influential executives. I'm just gonna. I mean, I want to say it was. I want to say it was Warren Buffett who said it way back a long time ago, and it really changed everything for me because he said there is not a CEO alive who will not take your call if you have a legitimate way to help them increase their top line
Hmm.
or improve their bottom line. If it's real, oh, they want to talk to you. The problem is they can't remember the Warren Buffett said, I can't remember the last time anybody actually tried to get to me.
Wow.
They think he doesn't want to hear anything. And it's the truth is he does.
Hmm.
He wants to hear everything that matters. You know what I mean? He's probably a supreme essentialist. I've never met the man, but I would say that if anybody practiced business essentialism, it's probably Warren Buffett better than anybody.
Sure.
All you have to do is read his book to understand that.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
or Ben Graham's book for that matter, The Intelligent Investor. It's gold.
Oh,
You want to
love.
do investing, that's gold stuff right there.
Ooh,
Um,
nice. I love it.
but in any case, in technical analysis, if you can find it, that's Ben
Hmm.
Graham's his two books. When they interviewed Warren Buffett when he became famous, I remember it very very clearly because it was a big article on him. Everybody started talking about Berkshire Hathaway, and this is when it wasn't even what it is now, which is I think they just got a trillion. Didn't they just get $1 trillion
Yeah, I think
valuation?
they passed that. Yeah,
I think
passed
they
the mark.
did, and that was the one thing he wanted to do. In fact, I tell a lot of my clients, I go, look, like here's the thing, you can put all these systems in place, you can solve sales problems, everything, but it's not going to solve your problems.
Hmm.
Okay, that's never going to change because every time you solve a problem, you're introducing a variable into the system, and that initiates change all by itself.
Hmm.
So now you're going to have a different problem, right? So I tell people, look, me, Sam Wakefield, and every other person that's listening to this thing, we all have the same problem Warren Buffett has. Believe it or not,
Hmm.
we really, really do. Okay. See, Warren Buffett was trying to scale his company to $1 trillion. I don't know what you're trying to scale yours to, but I'm trying to scale mine to. It's the same problem.
Hmm.
You know what the difference is? Warren Buffett has a better problem.
More zeros attached to his problem.
Right? He's got a better problem. So you don't pray for your problems to go away. You just pray for better ones.
Oh, I love this. Well, so you said something just now that actually is a great way to turn the corner. You were talking about your clients you work with and those type of things. Tell us what you do now, because that is obviously how we
Interesting.
met.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
then,
Yeah.
as an extension of that,
I
who we're working with.
okay, so I started years ago as a cost containment guy, which is why I went after troubled companies. You know, and when I got burned out, I did I retrenched over 100 companies in 18 years, and it was
Hmm.
a lot. I learned a lot, but it was a lot. You learn all the best practices and you learn all of the worst practices at the same time. And it's really funny because I focus on trade businesses now because trade businesses to scale. I just
Hmm.
reversed that process. Okay. And I have been developing, and you know this, I've been developing a system for a long time now in terms of organizing it and getting it right. And really funny because I think it's right now. You just heard my first podcast, which just dropped, and I'm really glad that you liked it and you said it was cool and all that because I was really going after that. You know what I mean? Not cool, but I wanted it just to no fluff. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? No
And,
bullshit.
and quick post for plug for everybody. The podcast is called Scale It Now, and the first episode did drop yesterday, which is really cool. You can find it, I know, on Podbean. That's where I listened to it. So look for Scale It Now, and the first episode is a teaser into, I'm sure, a series of course, content that Tim's going to be coming out with pretty soon. So make sure you go find
Yeah.
Scale It Now and listen to it.
Yeah, I'm really anal on being over prepared. So, yeah, I think I told you yesterday how many outlines I already have done.
He's got a year planned, and I was like, okay,
Yeah, basically
you're
it's
just showing
it's
off now.
50. It's just 50. But I just want to be able to well, that's the whole thing, right? That's what I do now. I put
Hmm.
systems in place and help companies scale because you won't you've heard me say this, you won't rise to the level of your aspirations, you will fall to the level of your systems.
Hmm.
Okay. And
100%.
so I focus on the trade businesses because I love trade people. Okay. They're most of them are awesome guys and gals that are out there just working their tail off, helping just it sounds so corny, but helping, Americans,
Hmm.
just people take care of their houses,
Hmm.
take care of their homes. You know what I mean? Which is for the most part the biggest investment they'll ever make. And it's where they're going to raise their kids. It means a lot.
Hmm.
But tradespeople, they can build anything. They can put up the best walls, most beautiful masonry, the whole bit. But most of them don't know how to build a business.
Right.
Okay, and they've had no formal business training.
Hmm.
And what I wanted to do was create a system that would be duplicatable, very, very simple to implement, and very, very simple to follow
Hmm.
so that they could actually scale and could provide them a framework to scale as high as they wanted to scale it to. Because most
Hmm.
most people when they're in the trade business, I mean, most of your companies they're smaller.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? They're not even regional companies. They're pretty much, either county companies or they're city companies. They cover a city or a given span of territory. Usually it's within a 2-hour drive because
Sure.
they don't want you don't want your service people out longer than that or your install crews out longer than that. So it most of them are smaller, but the system small business, most people don't realize this, but small business, when you're talking about valuations, that's anything 500 million and under.
Hmm. Right.
Okay.
So for
That's,
perspective for everybody
yeah.
listening, we hear all this social media stuff, and something we want to circle back to in a second. You keep mentioning scaling. We want to give a definition on there. But so everybody in that is listening, and all of the big dogs in the trades industries, these companies that hit 100 million, that hit five, there's only maybe what, two, three organizations in the entire country that would qualify as a big business, because 500 million is a year annual, is that magic number. So everyone is small business. So everybody listening, for perspective, I don't care how many Lambos that the guys on social media have, they sold their business hit 100 million and they sold it. It's a small business. It's not this enormous, crazy thing. It's perspective. We just haven't seen that type of growth in the trades yet or before. It doesn't mean it's not possible, and it doesn't mean it's not going to be happening with companies that implement this type of a methodology. So those
Well,
just
thank
quick
you. I appreciate that,
clarification
Sam.
there. But I want to circle back to something here real quick. You've mentioned scale several times, and of course, the name of the
Uh-huh.
company is Scale It Now. And
Thank you, by the way.
yeah, absolutely. For most people
For
in the
those of
trade.
you, for those of you who don't know, and that's pretty much everybody listening because you don't know me. Um, when I started to really get to a point where I could start putting out an MVP or a minimum viable product, okay, I was asking Sam, what do you think? Because Sam's out there. I mean, you guys know who he is. And so I was like, Sam, what do you think is a good name for this? And so we are kicking some names around. I can't remember the dumb stuff we came up. But finally, one day I just went, hey, Sam, would you mind if I called it scaling now? He's like, well, no, not at all. He goes, I'm flattered. And I go, no, it's great. It's exactly what I'm trying to say.
Hmm.
And but I did find the domain.
Love it, love it. So on
But
this
go
idea
ahead.
of
I'm
scale,
sorry.
and you're welcome, of course. Yep, I function from this abundance mentality. There's so much to go around that it's great. It's cool, and especially with what we're doing together now, it just makes total sense anyway. But when we're talking about scaling, what most contractors they don't truly understand the difference between growing and scaling.
Sure.
And because everyone thinks, oh, I hit this, I put $1 in and I get, $1.50 out or whatever the
Right.
the transfer is. And so they're like, okay, well, I just need more trucks on the road. And so if I have 5 trucks on the road and I make five, I'm just using some wild round numbers, everybody. If I have 5 trucks on the road, I'm making $5 million a year. If I put one truck on the road, I'll make 6 million, and one more truck, I'll make 7 million, and just quantity of they call scale like that. But give us
Right.
a real definition of the difference between scale and growth, because I think this will be a good foundation for everybody listening to help understand the rest of what you really go over and what you talk about.
Sure. Sure. Thank you. You kind of hit the nail on the head with the first part because scaling comes down to your asset intensity. Okay. Now here we're going to get into some business speak, and I'm sorry for that, but I'm going to call it what it is. Okay.
No
You have
apologies
assets. Yeah.
necessary here.
You
We're
have
no holds
assets
barred on
in.
this show.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So you have assets in the company, right? That's all your cash. That's all of your tools, your trucks, your desks. Everything is an asset, including your receivables. Those are assets as well, right? Now, you also have liabilities and all of that, but for now, we're going to focus on assets. So the question is when you look at your assets, and you say, okay, what Sam was talking about. Okay, I've got 2 trucks on the road. And I'm doing $1 million. If I put another truck on the road, I'm going to do $1.5 million. Well, if you're scaling, there's an economic term called returns to scale. Okay, and you may not be just because you could put a third truck on the road does not mean that is going to have provide you the same profitability. It might cost you more to run the third truck or 3 trucks altogether from a profit standpoint or from the cash bleed than it would normally. Okay, so let's say that it cost you, just for math purposes, let's say that it cost you, after everything, it cost you 85 cents on every dollar, and you're dropping 15 points to the bottom. You're a double digit company, which is fantastic. And it cost you 85 cents on every dollar that you made, right? So, but if you scale and you put that third truck on the road, what if that costs you $87 or $88 or $89? It
Hmm.
doesn't seem like a lot, okay, that extra 4%. But remember, you just went to an 11% company,
Hmm.
dropping to the bottom. Okay. So it does have a massive effect. Now, if you scale again, that same number hits. And there's a geometric mathematical issue that starts to occur. In order to return to your scale, which was your original profitability point, you must charge more or find a way to cut costs.
Hmm.
And that when people start cutting costs, that's when they start making gigantic mistakes. Gigantic mistakes. First thing that normally gets cut is the comp plan.
Hmm.
Worst thing you can do. Okay? Worst thing you can do. Because if I'm your top sales rep, remember my resignation letter? You
Hmm.
cut my comp plan, you mess with my comp plan,
You're about to
I'm
see that
out.
resignation
Guess
letter.
what? All those calls that I've been getting every week, now I'm taking them. Now I'm interviewing.
Hmm.
Now I'm interviewing. And by the way, for all of you salespeople that are out there, you should always be interviewing. Take a call, take an
Hmm.
interview. Doesn't matter. You're not being disloyal. How do you know you are being paid what you're worth?
Hmm.
The only way to know that is if somebody offers you more. Think
Right.
about it for instance, think about it like Josh Allen from the Buffalo Bills. For those of you who follow football, I'm a football guy, so I'm going to talk football here for a minute. Josh Allen just signed the biggest contract in history. It's over $300 million for 5 years. 250 million of that is guaranteed. That's never happened before. So Josh Allen found out what he was worth, or maybe he didn't because the Buffalo Bills did not want him to even entertain offers.
Hmm.
So they made him the highest paid quarterback of all time, okay, or at least with the biggest guarantee. And that's true with salespeople too, because when you start thinking about the engine, the people who score for the company, that's your salespeople.
Hmm.
Okay. So you should be interviewing to keep your interviewing skills sharp, number one, to find out what you're worth, number two, and you could pick up some intel on those companies as well, because if they're changing comp plans and they're messing with their people, you can make a couple of calls yourself and start recruiting people into your company
Right.
to help it grow.
Hmm.
So there's that tactic as well. So I didn't mean to digress from that,
No,
but
that's great info and good insight. I mean, I wish I had done that years ago. I was guilty of never. I only listened to what the owner of our company said about the other companies instead of talking to the other, answering the calls from the other companies to recruit me. And had I done that, I would have known a lot different in our market versus just keeping head down and staying quote
yeah,
unquote
absolutely.
loyal.
So I'm gonna I'll keep I'll boil this down. I'll distill this down into whose job who does what. Okay. If you're a salesperson out there right now, or you're a business owner, okay, and you are trying to you let me ask you this: what is the job of your salespeople? What is their number one job? What do you
to
think most people are thinking right now,
to close
Sam?
business.
Correct. That is not their job. You see, that's the problem. Okay, because when you think it's to close business, you're making it about you.
Hmm.
Okay, here's the job of the salesperson, and you need to drive this home with your people. Okay, is the job of a salesperson, especially a great one, is to max their comp plan.
Hmm.
If you design the comp plan right, which Sam can help you do, okay, if you design the comp plan right, you're going to scale anyway. You want to write this guy or this gal the biggest checks you possibly can because you designed the comp plan so that you benefit.
Hmm.
It fuels the growth of the business. That's the number one job of a sales rep. So make it easy for them
Hmm.
and make it aligned with your goals. Okay. The second thing, and this is the other side of that coin, or the I should say the other edge of that sword, because it's a double-edged sword. What's the job normally of an owner who thinks that the number one job of their sales crew is to close business? They think their job is to pay as little for that as they possibly can.
Right. Ooh, and
So,
that causes such animosity too, and that's
oh
why
yeah,
so
you
many
bet,
people
you
bounce from
bet,
company to company. I mean, I've been
you
guilty
bet,
of that, and I was a victim of that in my past at the same time.
you bet. And you can't build a championship team in any sport by cannibalizing your people.
Hmm.
Okay. And you can't win, you cannot build, especially a sales team,
Hmm.
and cannibalize them. So everything has to be aligned together. And if it's not, and that's, by the way, that's what Scale It Now is about.
Hmm.
And I know that's what you do too, Sam. That's why we're so aligned in our thinking, is because it's about getting everything aligned together so that everybody's rowing the boat in the same direction.
Hmm.
But in terms of finishing off what you asked me about scaling, because we digress quite a bit here. Look, if it's costing you 85 cents to scale to run your business now for two trucks, 85 cents on every dollar you make, then if you scale and it's costing you 3 cents more and it's costing you 88 cents, you're not scaling.
Hmm.
Okay. You're going in reverse. You're going at inverse economies of scale. And eventually it's going to hose you and you're going to contract.
Hmm.
Scaling is when you have systems in place that allow you to scale at 80 cents on the dollar with the new truck.
So costs go down while revenue goes
Costs
up.
go down. They don't remain the same, because if they remain the same, it's growth,
Hmm.
not scaling.
Right.
Okay. Now there comes a point once again where you have a return to scale. Let's say you have 20 trucks on the road. And at this point, there is no way that you can drive this down any further, because there's just no further returns to scale. So what do you have to do if you want to grow? Well, it's not the same model anymore. Who are you going to buy?
Hmm.
You want to buy the guy who's got two trucks, who's looking to get involved, who wants a bigger company. And this is where you start talking about how you're going to provide equity to partners that come in and assist you in getting the big dream done.
Right.
Okay. Now, for a lot of people, that's like, I don't want to share I'm not giving up anything in my company. Okay. So I always like to use this analogy. Mark Zuckerberg, everybody knows old Mark over there, Mr. Z. He is the largest single stakeholder or stock owner in Facebook.
Hmm.
How much of Facebook does everybody think Mark Zuckerberg owns? And there's probably a few of you who listen to Business News and you know this answer. Okay.
Mhm.
But many of you don't. Most of the time I get, oh, half at least. No. Mark Zuckerberg owns 11% of Facebook.
Mhm.
That's it. Warren Buffett does not own all of Berkshire Hathaway. In fact, most people don't realize he had a very, very astute partner the whole time, as good as Buffett was. The only difference between Buffett and Charlie Munger was not afraid to take a gamble on a flyer once in a while.
Yeah.
Charlie liked to throw a little bit of money down on the craps table. Okay, he liked to spin that roulette wheel once in a while. Buffett won't do that.
Mhm.
He won't step outside of his discipline.
Yeah. The
Okay,
rule
but
is
Munger
never
would.
lose money.
And Munger is just as rich as Buffett.
Mhm.
Okay, and he owned just as much Berkshire Hathaway as Buffett. They were partners. That went all the way back to Columbia University, way
Mhm.
back in the old days. And everyone that was part of that case study that Ben Graham did, you heard me mention Ben Graham before. Everyone that was a part of that became a billionaire.
Wow.
Okay, so yeah, it was very, very effective,
Mhm.
and that's why he called his book The Intelligent Investor.
Sure.
Buffett said everything that I do is right in that book. All you got to do is read the book.
Sounds like it's going on the Close It Now book club list. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
no, it's a fantastic book. If you're thinking of, and it's simple. It's
Mhm.
really, really easy to understand. It's not complex at all. That's a great thing about Buffett. It's like the famous line when he said, "Well, why do people, how do you make the investments you make?" He goes, "Well, it's pretty simple." He goes, "I don't think people mess around when they put a Snickers bar in their mouth. I think they're telling me they want a Snickers bar."
Mhm. Love
He's
it.
like, if I can buy Snickers or I can't remember the name of the company, Mars, I think. I can't remember
Mhm.
the name of the parent company. He's like, if I can buy Snickers for X and it's worth X, I'm buying Snickers because
Mhm.
people, once again, don't mess around when they put a candy bar in their mouth.
So this is the expansion through acquisition concept that we're talking about. So once you
Yeah,
hit
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
certain
So
point in penetrating your market,
yeah,
the
sure.
expansion and for everybody that is like at this place considering possibly buying another company, yes, you get a lot of and totally disagree with me if I'm wrong here, but you get a lot of you get cool stuff, you get great people, you get sometimes a building, sometimes those assets and properties and stuff, but the most important thing that you're buying is the database. You're buying the client list.
Mhm.
And that is crucial because that's how we're actually able to scale, because now we can do the same marketing to more people at a lower cost.
Correct. That's absolutely correct. It's sort of like when you're networking, the job when you're like you have those BNI groups and things like that, and those are wonderful, by the way,
Mhm.
to pick up business. They work very well. But when you're networking, you're trying to get into the circle of influence or circle of concern of everyone in that building. The average person knows, I think, it's 250 people.
Hmm. Yeah,
The average
absolutely.
person knows roughly 250 people,
Hmm.
and you want 250 all 250 of those people to be thinking of you the
Hmm.
next time they need your services.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the whole point of doing that. And when you purchase a company that has two trucks, let's say they have two trucks and 5,000, 10,000 clients, because maybe their system is in HVAC or something like that. My numbers are probably off, but you're buying the goodwill of the company.
Hmm.
Goodwill is the value of the brand that's intangible. It's basically the known entity of the company. Like for
Hmm.
instance, in plumbing, Roto Rooter, everyone knows that name.
Hmm.
Everyone. Okay, and they're I think they're franchises. I'm not sure,
Right.
but you can franchise a Roto Rooter. You
Hmm.
can franchise all of those places because you're buying that brand. And when people see that, they see the brand and they're like, "Yep, let's do it."
Hmm.
So, becoming or growing your brand by putting it on those other trucks and tapping into that database is a way to scale without necessarily spending as much money to
Hmm.
garner
I love this. So
customers.
let's turn the corner a little bit because there's so we talk about so many things, obviously, in my coaching sessions, but there's some cool things that you've developed recently that if everybody listens to the first podcast, we'll hear you talk about them. But there's some methods to get to the scaling that I think everybody needs to understand in this kind of first look podcast that we're doing, because I know that we're
Huh?
going to do some more and dive in deeper on some of this. But talk about some of the mops and things uh,
Oh,
for give us a quick overview of the Scale It Now system. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the speed scale, and like how that has moved into your ideology about how you develop the mops and some of the different the ways and means that we're
yeah,
doing.
sure. And I'm glad you said the speed square because the system I settled on the name speed scale, and I wanted it to be simple and I wanted it to work basically like a speed square because you can do anything with a speed square. Okay, I love speed squares. I really do. I've got like four of them, and they can work. And no matter what you do, you use the pivot point on a speed square, and you can have any angle you want. Okay, it'll rotate. So for me, speed scale covers every angle of your business.
Hmm.
And so I thought, oh, well, you know what? I'll just call it speed scale because originally I called it like the fast scale framework or something. And I just thought that was a mouthful. So speed scale system seemed to work a little
Yeah.
bit better.
Keep it simple, right?
And yeah, and so it's really simple. Your business, any business that's in small business, okay, unless you're in the upper echelon of small business, like what we talked about before, you really only have three business units. You have your sales, you have Connex, and Connex is in the trades. Okay, so we're talking about the business units in the trades. All right, I'll get to Connex in a moment. But in terms of sales, you've got your books. I'm not going to say finance. I'm not going to say accounting because you don't have that. You might have a CPA, right? But that's by no means are they keeping your books.
Hmm.
By no means are they keeping your books. Okay? In fact, most contractors that I come across, their books are a mess.
Hmm.
They don't know what they're spending, or they can't tell me the profitability by job. They don't know how to ring it out. And in fact, none of these big software companies that are out there, I'm not going to name them because they might come after me, but most of them don't have a means by which you can do that,
Hmm.
which is criminal in my mind. You've got to know the profitability of every job, or at least you need to have your margins and your ratios and your thresholds in place. Why? Because this may not be a job you want.
Right.
And if you don't know what your thresholds are, right? And the threshold, what is that? That's just the point of no return. Like if you need 30% on your job, then taking 29 on the job, no.
Hmm.
You know,
That
that
means
comes
you're
back goes
paying
back.
them to do the work for them.
That's right. You're losing money.
Hmm.
All right. Now, are you actually making money? Yes, but you're not making your threshold margin.
Right. Yeah,
So your
you're
ideal
flowing
margin,
revenue. You're not making money. There's a big
and keep in
difference.
mind, your ideal margin is not your threshold margin.
Hmm.
Okay. So you gotta make sure you understand there's a difference between the two. Okay. And think of it like if you're going to do a job and it's going to cost $100 to do the job for you, what's the minimum amount that is acceptable? And please do not think in dollars, think in percentages. Is it $110? Is it $115?
Hmm.
Is it $120? When does this become palatable for you as a business person, right? Because at $110, well, you made 10% on the job, right?
Hmm.
At 115, you made 15 points. At 120, it's 20 points. So, what is the threshold? If you're telling me I'm not going to do it for 115, then will you do it for 117? Will you do it for 119? Will you do it for 120? Yeah, I'll do it for 120. Well, guess what your threshold is?
Hmm.
It's 20 points. You need to understand that. And that's just a simple way of doing it. Okay. To where you're going to you know what that threshold is. And at that point, you've got to say no. It's an easy way to say no. And keep in mind, the hardest thing for every entrepreneur to do, particularly in phase one, which is year one of their build, which,
Hmm.
by the way, your build is your business. You don't just build houses or build HVAC systems, but you build a business. So, year one of your build is put together by 4 frames. Those are quarters. Each
Hmm.
one of those frames has studs, 13 of them. That's 13 weeks. Every day, you have to drive nails. The nails are the daily activities, the essentials that move the needle. If you don't do them, your frame will not hold up.
Exactly. So then you
Each
end up with
month,
companies that are 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years old, and essentially they're still year one building the frame of their company and never got it completed to start with.
that's right. Because you here's the thing. You won't rise. Look, if you want to build a 10, the way that I describe it is you want to build a 10-story steel tower, okay, of a business. You want to grow this thing to 50 million? Great. Okay. Ground break. Here's where we're breaking ground. The first 90 days, frame 90. Okay, we're going to throw up a frame here. We're going to put up 13 studs. We're going to have all of your nails. You better drive some nails, baby. Okay, the minimums,
Hmm.
right? Because if you're not driving the nails, it's never going to stand up. You
Right.
can't hit your beams. Your studs hold up your beams. Okay, notice how we're going with construction here. Each beam is a month.
Hmm.
Okay. What does the month do? The month bear this quarter, the frame 90, bears the weight of the next part of the build. So if you didn't drive enough nails, you're never going to make it. It's not
Hmm.
going to stand up. God forbid you have bad weather. The
Right.
wind blows, you got a little rain.
We have a
Your
little
frame,
bit cooler summer like
yeah,
2024 was.
yeah, your frame on your business is going to fall down.
Hmm.
You are on mud. You're not pounding nails, you're pounding mud.
Hmm.
Can't do it,
Yeah.
right? So that's what it is really about. And then what you have to do is to keep things simple. And I cover this in the first podcast. Look, you don't have to have complicated systems. Okay. It's really, really easy to put this together. Look, um, uh, basically just take 5 things. Okay. You can have a one page, like for instance, you got three business units. You've got sales, you've got Connex, you've got books. So, what's the process?
Hmm.
It's really simple. Okay, and this is again, I say this in the podcast. This is oversimplified. Okay, and I know that. I know there's more steps. Okay,
Hmm.
but here's basically this is for time purposes. All right, how do you sell the furnace? A furnace. Hey, you spec it, you measure, you pitch it. Right? How do you get money in? You invoice, you chase the invoice, and you close it.
Hmm.
Okay, you close it out. All right, you log it. Right, and if you're doing Connex, what do? Connex gets jobs done. Sales gets jobs in. Books gets jobs paid and money straight.
Hmm.
Okay, so how do you get it done? Okay, we do X Y Z to get this done or that done, right? And these are all your nails that you have to drive. Like for instance, let's turn it into sales because it's a little easier putting these metrics together for sales without getting sounding like we're getting into the weeds. But let's say that you want to, I don't know, let's say your average ticket on your offering is $5,000, okay, and you want to grow by $1 million, right?
Hmm.
Well, it seems to me that you need to sell 200 new units, right?
Sure. That's one way to get there.
Okay. What's your, and this is where we get into market zoning, just
Hmm.
like we get into community zoning. Okay. How do you zone your market? Right. We talked about this a little earlier, good,
Hmm.
fast, and cheap, right? Who do you want to be?
Right. And there's no wrong answer,
Uh,
everybody. It's just
what's that?
decide make it. I was just saying, and there's no wrong answer. It's
There's no
deciding
wrong answer.
who you want to be in your market and then saying no to the other things.
Correct.
Or, really pursuing the things that we
Correct.
decide for and build your structure around that. And this is I love this conversation because it explains for all of the business owners out there. This is perfectly explains why say your company hit the $5 million mark and you can't seem to grow past it, or it hit, you name the mark, 8 million, 10 million, 12 million, wherever you're at, and it's like it all made sense up until this point, but now it seems like there's this plateau that you can't seem to get past. Well, what is happening is exactly like Tim was saying, you didn't have the right studs and beams in place to support any structure higher than that. Yes,
Hmm.
it'll hold it up to the 5 million mark or the 10 million mark, but it's not going to support anything else until you go back and restructure underneath it, build the systems to be able to grow beyond where you're currently seeing your plateau. And so what I love so much about Tim, and what I love so much about you, Tim, is the way that you've put all this together in a way that's so easy to understand. And this is why we align so well. You know, I'm all about keeping sales simple and breaking it down to
Hmm.
just the
Hmm.
easiest way to do it. And we don't need to be, have all this flamboyant speech and all this kind of thing. Just be
No.
normal and be real, be real people. Stop being weird and start selling. And you've
Yeah.
done the same thing with all of the internal structures that we talk about.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and that's the foundation. Okay, so that's when you're pouring concrete. You
Hmm.
haven't even put up studs.
Yeah.
But you sometimes if you're trying to frame up and you find out that you might be on a bad spot, or you might not have the right things, the right foundation might not be in place, you might have to fix that.
Hmm.
So as you're trying to scale, you can do two things at once. Okay, one does not serve the other, and we talked about this a little bit, because let's say, for instance, your focus is on sales. Well, that's okay, but let's say, for instance, your Connex unit can only process, just for math purposes, let's say that they can only process or get fulfilled 10 jobs a month.
Hmm.
And
And
now
tell
you've been
everybody
you
what Connex stands for, real quick,
okay,
just so they're
yeah,
so they're
okay.
on the same page with
Um,
you.
yeah, sure. Construction execution.
There you go.
Okay. Construction execution operations, right? And it comes from Connex comes from a term that I actually coined. It's called constructics, because there is no place you can actually learn. There's no school that teaches it how to do project management, costing, estimating, and books.
Hmm.
Okay, and keep track of your costing. There's no place where you can learn all of that. Right, all of the different elements of moving a project through your value chain, through your
Hmm.
fulfillment channel. There's no real school for this that has the overlapping discipline that comes with all of the nuances of someone in the trades.
Hmm.
So I call it constructics, which is the overlapping disciplines, and construction execution, operations execution is what Connex is.
Hmm.
So
Love it.
Connex is that. So in any other company, it'd be, you could call it admin in another company, or you could call it operations
Sure.
in another company.
Hmm.
But operations and admin are not the same thing anyway.
It's not, and this is so
Okay, so
perfectly sums up that exact role within the trades, within home services, because
mhm,
it is exactly that. And
yeah,
so
yeah.
I'd love for we're oh my gosh, we could talk about this forever. We're kind of running out of time. We got to land this plane on this particular podcast. So everybody that's listening, first of all, if you're on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. But first of all, if you want to hear more from Tim, because trust me, we're just barely scratching the surface, message us and let us know.
Yes,
Um,
I am a fountain of useless information.
I'd love for you to, real quick before we wrap, um, if you don't mind, I'd love for you to share some of the metrics of growth that you helped with the last company that you worked with
Oh gosh,
here.
yeah.
And that way
You
people
mean
get a feel for the potential of what it can do within their organization. Because, all in the industry for everybody, we hear, oh, we grew 40%, 50%, these types of numbers, and we celebrate it. Well, that's so surface level based on what is actually possible. So, Tim, take a quick minute and share about some of the growth that you saw in the last company you worked with. And for everybody, this is exactly why Tim and I are, we're doing some things together. Because I can come in and do sales, but if your company can't support the sales that we now have, you can absolutely outsell yourself and shut down because of that.
Yeah,
And
if you
so
can't
that's
deliver,
why I
you're hurting
found
the
somebody
brand.
to be able to come in and fix the other sides of the company. So officially, this is the first announcement. Close It Now is basically your the learning systems. We have the systems in place to be able to not only close more business, but to scale the company as well. So give some insight into what that last your last numbers were like.
Sure, happy to do it. I'm not going to say the name of the company,
Sure.
um, uh, but it was a roofing company.
Mhm.
Okay? And I started with them in Oct-
And before anybody's
se-
listening, lets that turn you off. This works for every company.
Oh
No,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah,
has
yeah. It
nothing to
doesn't.
do with roofing or
I,
so many
I,
people in HVAC think, well, that's not like ours. We've got more complicated moving parts.
no, 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 no.
We don't.
Look, I've worked with uh, HVAC companies. I've worked with uh, landscaping, hardscaping companies. This one happens to be a roofing company, but I also have a commercial real estate company,
Hmm.
and they're doing the same thing.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
So, but in the roofing company that I'm talking about, I started with them in I want to say September of 23. September of 23. The company grew 100% in 24, and they did it by the end of the third quarter. Everything after that was gravy because we went the first 12 months, which was phase one.
Wow.
Okay, so the second year, which was 2024, which everything was pretty well rolling. Because keep in mind, your first year, there's a lot of lifting that happens during frame 90. Keep in mind, each frame, right, a quarter, frame 90, frame 180, frame 270, frame 360. Okay, I'm giving you 5 days off here. Be grateful. Just kidding. So but and then in the second year, we were at our annual kickoff. This year in January, we were at our annual kickoff. We closed out 20, and ABC Roofing was there. ABC Roofing Supply. I think they're the biggest supplier in the country. Pretty sure. And when they heard, well, they knew that something was up because the orders just came through. That there was no tomorrow. I mean, they saw a massive increase, and in fact gave massive pricing concessions. And this is another thing that this type of thing will allow you to do if you're listening. Is once you hit 5 million, once you hit 10 million, and you're out there for HVAC system, I'm gonna talk a little term that I just learned, TM. Okay, you can negotiate with your TM to get better pricing concessions for yourself. And it's not always pricing. What are they going to
Hmm.
do for you?
Better
Okay.
terms.
I know that one of my clients, they have got all of their social media, website, and digital stuff was all developed by their supplier.
Wow.
They paid for it.
Hmm.
Okay. So there's all kinds of things that you can get in addition to that you can negotiate for as part of your agreement if you're willing to stay with somebody. Because let's face it, whoever your supplier is, your territory manager, the rep involved, look, their income is tied to you and your success. So you've got to leverage that. And but the point is that when they heard the actual percentage of growth, they couldn't believe it. And before I announced it, I had the person stand up and I said, "Hey, question: what out of all of the companies that you've heard that out of all of the companies that have grown in ABC Supply that you've heard of?" Because keep in mind, he's local. He knows about some of the national stuff. I said, "What is the largest amount of growth that occurred?" And he goes, "Oh, I think it was like 23%." I said, "Okay, great, right, no problem." I said, this company has grown 266% in 2024. That's how much growth there was.
Hmm.
And it was done, by the way, by the third quarter. Okay. Because you'll always have a trailing number if you're running from January to January, because all of your stuff doesn't land. It accrues, but it doesn't land. Okay. So your P&L won't reflect it.
Hmm.
So you've got to understand how to derive those numbers. They're not projections, they've accrued. So this is why you've got to have systems in place that tell you what juice is coming in.
Hmm.
Okay. What juice is coming in and how is it bleeding out? You need to know those numbers. But anyway, the point is, it was 266%. And the reason why this happened is because they went all in on this. They went all in. They did every single thing they were supposed to do. And literally, as they were driving nails and hitting their keystones in each frame 90, I got to tell you, we were crashing through them
Hmm.
because all of the oars were rowing in the same direction. And this is not when we started there. This is not a big support team. Okay, one of the things that we do is we train our clients how to use VAs, and we've got a passel of them.
Hmm.
Okay, and they are trained. These people know the trade business. They know how it works. So they're going to walk right in, and they're going to be able to literally take a lot off of your desk immediately.
Hmm.
That's the one thing because and the labor is so inexpensive. I'm not going to get into that right now because I feel like a union boss would come and kill me. But literally, this is how you scale and you return to scale
Hmm.
because everything that can be done virtually should be
Sure.
because it's just simply by natural order it costs less.
Hmm.
All right. So in any case, yeah, it was 266%. Super happy about it. The worst thing that could happen to someone in the trade business, I think, is probably happening to those guys right now, and that is that I think that there is some large living that's occurring,
Hmm.
and that's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the worst thing you can do. Worst thing.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that is the death nail of pretty much every entrepreneur who ever swung a hammer. Okay,
Absolutely. All of
so,
a sudden,
because
start buying, let
yeah,
that
you start
lifestyle
buying, and
creep just go. Buy those
my
bigger toys.
my grandfather had a lot of funny aphorisms and quotes, and one thing that he told me once was he said, "Hey, listen, I'm not one of these fancy guys. But I'm gonna tell you this: if your outflow exceeds your income, your upkeep will be your downfall."
Ooh, that's really good.
Okay, that was yeah. My
Hmm.
grandfather said that his name was Joe. He used to call him Papa Joe, and he was from Texas, and he had that Southern twang. I remember one time I went through a Mexican drive-through one time, great Mexican food, and he said, quesadilla, right? You
Hmm.
know how to say quesadilla. My grandfather went, "Yeah, can I have one of those quesadillas?" And I
Quesadillas.
went, "What is that?" I just started laughing. He goes, "What's so funny?" He says, "That's what that says."
Love it.
He was a great guy, salt of the earth, just an awesome guy. But yeah, he had a lot of those sayings that were really funny. He used to like flip flops. He used to
Hmm.
say, "No, those are go aheads." You know why those are go aheads? Because you can't back up in those.
Oh, I love that because that's such like that's my daily wear. Is typically
Yeah,
if I'm not
yeah. he was
professional, that's what I'm wearing.
he was a funny
Oh,
guy. So the
love it.
point is that the speed scale system actually delivers results, and it is that it's simple. And
Hmm.
here's the worst part of that. Okay, here's the worst part of simple. The moment it's really funny because in math and in science, they call when you simplify an equation, they call it an elegant solution. Have you ever heard that?
Yes.
Okay, in math, that's an elegant solution that you crafted.
Hmm.
Wonderful. Blah blah blah. Right? Okay. The simplification to do that elegant solution um, took years to proof. Okay. A lot of mental power and sleepless nights went into that.
Hmm.
So here's what I'm going to prepare you for. When you see how simple this is, all right, you are going to learn very quickly this is going to be the hardest lift you are ever going to do. If you're an Olympic lifter, this is your world record, baby, getting it off the ground. I'm not kidding
Hmm.
because
Can
it
confirm.
all boils down to the fundamentals of nails. Look, if you can be the most graceful wide receiver who can jump the highest, run the fastest, and everything else. But if you can't catch the ball, you can't play football. All right. Or if you're a defensive player, you could be the fastest and the most athletic. But if you can't stick your head in there and make a tackle, then you suck. I can't use you. I don't
Hmm.
care how fast you are. All right. This isn't tag football. This is tackle. All right. And nails is no different. Okay. I like to talk about Devontae Adams because when you watch Devontae Adams run routes, he's a wide receiver, by the way, now playing for the Rams. He's one of the greatest wide receivers that ever played the game. And when you watch Adams run routes, you see the culmination of absolute dedication of years and years and years. And I tell my grandson, whose great ambition is to be a great wide receiver, I tell him, "Hey, look, how many times do you think Devontae Adams ran that post route? I'm talking about when no one was looking,
Hmm.
when it was 30 degrees outside, and there wasn't a cheering crowd, and he didn't want to do it. Okay, he didn't want to do it, but he went out and he did it anyway because his standard was greatness. Now, I'm not saying that you have to do that, but let's talk about driving nails. Let's talk about all you roofers out there that might be listening to this. Okay. No one likes door knocking. Door knocking sucks.
Hmm.
All right. Here's the thing, guys with no grit, they always try to wing it. They try to get out of it. They try to tell you there's no storm. There's no this. There was a storm last year. I can tell you that. And they had 12 months to put in a claim, didn't they?
Sure
All right.
did.
So there's all kinds of things that come into play on that where if you're working smart as a salesperson or as a sales director, there's no excuses. There are no excuses. And so nobody likes to drive the nails on the daily basis. No one likes to do the fundamentals.
Hmm.
But people with grit, they do it anyway because they know the frame won't stand up if they don't drive the nails. And those are the people who are going to help you build your business. All right. And if I ever come back or if you ever call me, then I'll tell you how you can make those people stay with you forever.
100%.
They
Sounds
become a
like we're
part of
setting
your
up the
dream.
next episode.
Oh yeah. So, but in any case, yeah, you've got to do the nails. No one likes to
Hmm.
do it, and that's where the simplicity comes in. This is it, day in and day out. This is what we're going to do.
Hmm.
Basically, we're going to have egg whites and oatmeal for breakfast every day for the next year. How long can you tough it out
Hmm.
before you break?
Right.
All right, it's that simple. But if you want to get to the next level, this has to be done
Hmm.
because this is going to lay the foundation. It's going to lay the entire ground floor, all the load bearing of this entire structure that you're trying to build, which is called your business.
Hmm.
Simple. You got to do it.
Oh, this is beautiful. So for everybody listening, I know that you're probably going to want to listen to this one a few times because there were some major nuggets that Tim was laying on everybody. If you
I
want to
have
hear
no idea what
more,
you.
if you want to hear more, uh, for all intents and purposes, it looks like Tim is going to be one of the speakers at the Relentless, the Ultimate Sales Transformation Boot Camp in Boston, May 6th, 7th, and 8th. So, this is episode one of the speaker series that I have started on the podcast. So, for everybody that is listening, get your ticket because this was just the tip of the iceberg of what he's going to be covering there and going a lot more in depth about some of these processes and some of the things it takes to scale, not just grow, to scale, because such a major difference there.
Yeah, and I'm one of those people that don't believe that any book was too short or any presentation was too short. So my presentation is going to be on shortcuts in business, shortcuts to scaling, and it's basically three words: there aren't any.
I love it.
That's my entire presentation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, all right. Well, cool. So before we go, real quick, let everybody know how they can get in touch with you. And if they want to learn more, if they want to have you out to have you evaluate their business, do a discovery and see where in the world are we and what can we do to grow.
Yeah,
And so
sure,
that,
absolutely. They can reach me at tim@scaleit.now, or they can reach me at 512-222-4066. That's the best way to reach me. That's my direct line. Well, not my direct line, but Terrence will pick that up or Jade will pick
mhm,
that up. Those are my VAs and they're awesome. So, yeah, call me there. Happy to
perfect.
have a conversation
And
with
those will be in the show notes as well. So make sure that you check out the show notes. So Tim at scaleit.now and then the phone number he just listed. It's in my speed dial, so I don't have it
you.
memorized.
No, that's my direct line.
Yeah, for sure. So love it, everybody. So, yeah, Tim will be speaking at Relentless, the Close It Now boot camp. What they're doing, what they're doing, we're doing. It's 3 days in Boston, May 6th, 7th, 8th. It's going to be total fire. Transform your business, transform your mindset, and I'm honored to have to be sharing the stage with Tim up there. Because he is such an incredible human being, as well as his knowledge about business is unmatched. So, that is what we're doing. And if you want to, you can always reach me directly as well, Sam at closeitnow.net, or go to, of course, the website closeitnow.net. Join the Facebook group, and we talk about a lot about this kind of thing in there. 2025 is next level for Close It Now, and this is one of the big things we're doing is expanding into. We decided after the last couple of years, I decided that not we, I decided that I was tired of seeing it doing sales training for organizations, and then not yes, we get lasting results with sales, but the organizations, the companies that I was working with, they didn't know what to do with it. We did great sales, and then either they couldn't fulfill it, they were dropping the ball on the installs, they were dropping the ball in the office, they were dropping the ball with accounting, all these different things. And then they coming back to me and be like, oh my gosh, we need this, we need this, we need this, we need more help, we need more leads, we need more of this. And that is exactly why I put this together, to be able to help everyone in the different elements that you need it. So that's what we're doing now. So when we do one portion of the company, what we like to say is we're not consultants, we're not coaches, we're not trainers anymore. We're resultants. If
Oh,
you
you
work with
you
us, you will get results if you do what we say. If you don't
yeah,
do what we say,
exactly.
we're going to fire you as a customer because you're not implementing, right? Everybody knows success happens at the speed of implementation. So, thanks for being on the show today, Tim.
No worries. I'm glad you're using that term,
Yeah,
resultant.
absolutely.
That's
We
awesome.
we are resultants, and
I
I
agree.
I got that from Tim. We talked about that months ago in coaching, and I adopted it immediately because it truly defines what we do.
Sure.
We're not here just to teach you something new and say, okay, fly little birds. I hope you do great with it. No, we're here to just one, yes, teach you something new, but more importantly, help you and hold your hand along the way to make sure it sticks and make sure it actually drives the needle in your sales numbers in your organization, so you see results and lasting change. So that's why we're the
That's
resultants.
absolutely true because the metrics, if you're driving nails and you've got your measurements of performance and your measurements of progress, then those are your mops. And you asked me about that earlier, but
Hmm.
that's what's going to allow you to delegate and not have to worry about it. You don't have to fix every single move.
Hmm.
You don't have to babysit it.
Yeah.
Let the mops.
It's the
That's why I call
biggest
it mops
liberating
because
part. Yeah, so the biggest
yeah,
liberating thing is that
yeah,
business owners, the second you can say, I don't have to be involved in every step of this because now
that's
I
right.
have both systems and people that I can trust and know that they're going to get the results we're looking for. And then I just check in on the results along the way. And it's really
Yeah,
beautiful.
I have to agree with that because I can tell you this. I dealt with a lot of CEOs and a lot of CFOs in the past, hundreds of them. And I can tell you that to a person, when especially the ones who founded companies, okay, they would tell they I said, what was the thing that changed everything? And in one way or another, they would say this: the moment that I got the hell out of the way and I let my people do their job.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Okay, you can't be a control freak.
Yeah.
You've got to build the systems, take care of everything. That's why you call them mops. The
Hmm.
metrics are mops because they clean it up.
Hmm.
Okay, when it's a mess, you clean your mess with a mop. Right, somebody's spilling. You got some things that are happening. Okay, mop that up.
Yep.
Let's go.
Ah,
Okay,
so good. Well,
so that's where that comes from.
so,
So
so, so good. Ah,
anyway,
thanks again. We'll continue this conversation.
yeah, I know, Sam. It's so bad because you and I could do this all day.
Right? Oh my gosh. For all of you, if you could be a fly on the wall to our conversations, there's no telling what you'd take away, but it would be good because we're always growing and developing things. So, all right, everybody, we're going to sign off here. Don't just work to become someone worth buying from. Work to be in an organization. And so this is for all you business owners. Work to create your business into into a business that people want to work for and people want to buy from. And for everybody else, when you're the solo out there, when everybody, the sales, the technicians, every single person, you go be someone worth buying from. See you next time.
All right.